Hey YouTube, Casey Classic 7 here, back in with another video. Got some NBA 2K21 here, last gen. And in this video, I wanted to share with you guys an experiment that I did with the NBA 2K21 rosters. But before we get too deep into that, please excuse the PS4 in the background. I know it sounds like it's about to blow up or it's about to take off in a jetpack. If the humming is picking up, so if you hear that humming in the background, I'm not sure if you do or if you don't, that's what that is. But my PS4 is fine, it's just extremely loud. So back to the experiment. So for this experiment, I wanted to do a comparison between the current official NBA 2K21 rosters versus what the NBA 2K rosters look like when all of these players have retired out of the league. So for this experiment, I used the default MYLeague settings and auto-generated draft classes. The reason why I chose auto-generated draft classes is because anyone who plays this game has access to them, and for whatever reason, a lot of people in the online world and just on the forums have a huge issue with auto-gen draft classes. So I want to see why people don't like them and just overall get a feel for what players are being generated for the future of the NBA by the 2K computer and the 2K system. And for the default settings, the reason why I went with those again is because if you guys want to recreate this experiment, you can do so, and it can be done easily. I didn't want to have any influence on anything that was going on and what was going to be shown for the future players and how they developed and stuff like that. So I felt like putting it on default and using auto-gen draft classes was going to be the best way to see what players develop and how they developed. Also, with default settings, I feel in the auto gen draft classes, I feel like this was the way that 2K intended the MYLeague to be played, because if it didn't, why would they have the settings at on default in the way that they are anyway? So obviously, when it comes to the draft classes, we have the ability to edit auto gen draft classes or edit draft classes made by the community, as well as edit the settings for the MYLeague. So that's one of the good things about MYLeague and draft classes, is if we don't like what 2K presents us with, we have the ability to change those things. So let's get into what I found with the official 2K roster. So the way that the players are rated on this roster is based on the history of the NBA. So as you see, I have the current NBA player list right here, and you don't see any 99 players on this list. The reason being, like I said, is because it is based on the whole entire history of the NBA. So your 99 players are reserved for players like Michael Jordan, LeBron James when he was back in Cleveland and he won them a championship a few years back. Those players. Your 98 players, so you can have an idea of how 2K tiers their players, is reserved for players like Bill Russell, your LeBron James when he was playing for the Heat. There's a couple versions of Michael Jordan in there as well, and Magic Johnson was also rated 98 for whatever year he was rated 98 for. Your 97 players are going to be the players who had great seasons, your MVP type players, Hakeem Olajuwon, Kevin Garnett, KD has a version in there as well. Curry has a version of in there as well. Obviously, you see Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James from this current season also has a 97 version as well. So to me, I feel like 2K separates their players based on their perception of that player. So obviously LeBron James and Michael Jordan there's an argument of who's the GOAT, so that's why they're both rated 99. They also have 98 versions based on that particular season, I feel, and the 97 versions are based on that player having a great season for that current year. So that's the first thing that I noticed with the current roster, is how 2K separates the ratings, and it's not just overalls, it's just all the ratings in general. So they definitely have a tendency to allow the elite players to feel elite and whatever elite skills they have, they'll be showcased. And as you can see, as I go through some of these ratings, there's only 9 players that have an A+ 3-point scoring. There's 9 players with A+ defending, 4 players with post defense. When we're talking about playmaking, 8 players, 11 players with A+ rebounding. So they definitely make it a point to separate the elite talent from the very good talent to the good talent and to the rest of the league, because even as we go up, 53 players that have an A rating and 223 players with an A- rating or better. So from A to A- or better, you can even see that talent pool jumping. So that's something that the current roster definitely makes it a point and emphasizes, is to separate the elite talent from the rest and just have separations between each category. Some people may like that, some people may not like that, but it's something that you'll find on the current roster. So going back to the roster, another thing when it comes to the ratings and to the badges, in my opinion, I feel like it's based on perception and stats versus it being based on ratings and the reality of that particular player. I think LeBron James, the current LeBron James, is a perfect example of that. We're gonna put into question 2 of his badges here, the Chase Down Artist and the Dimer. So just to give you an idea of some other players who have the Hall of Fame level Dimer: Steve Nash, Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, John Stockton. Now, I'm not saying LeBron James isn't a Hall of Fame level Dimer player. That's up for debate, but you have to question, is LeBron James from this current season or the last season that's been played, was he a Hall of Fame level Dimer player for that season? No other versions of LeBron James have Hall of Fame Dimer. This is the only one that has it. So you have to definitely question whether you guys think that's accurate or not. Another thing that you want to question whether it's accurate or not is him having Hall of Fame Chase Down Artists. Obviously, LeBron James is known for these amazing chase down blocks that he's had throughout his career, and he has a history of, just being a player who can chase down players and have these great blocks before the opposing team can score. But is he doing that at a Hall of Fame level or at the top of the top, like he did a few years ago when he was in Cleveland, or when he was in Miami a few years before that, or even when he was early on in his career? Is he chasing down blocks the same exact way? Because you have to remember, these badges are tiered, similar to like what I was saying with them separating the rest of the players from one another. So to me, Hall of Fame means that he is doing it better than anyone else has ever done it, in comparison to, like I was saying before about the rating scale. So is he chasing down blocks today better than any other time that he has done it, or not better, but as good as any other time that he has done it, and as good as any other player with chase down artists, LeBron James today. Again, that's up for debate, but that's the reason why I believe that the ratings are based on perception and the stats of the player, versus it being based on the actual skill that that player has. Personally, I feel that 2K has to rate players a certain way, and have to be rated a certain way. That's another reason why the intangible ratings was added into the game, because you can adjust that in that adjust the player's rating without messing with any of the stats. So based on players having to be rated a certain way versus the actual skill of the player, you have these influctuated, or maybe ratings that are players that are underrated. But again, I think that 2K has to do that based on again, the perception of the player and the fans and the media, and how that player is covered. They have to be seen a certain way. I'm not saying I have a problem with LeBron James being the best player in the league, but is he a 97 overall, is what I'm saying. Do his skills here, do they represent the way that he actually plays the game in real life? Again, all of this is up for debate, but I stand by the players being rated on perception and stats versus them being rated in reality and realism. Another so to further push this point, a player like Magic Johnson has a 76.3, and he barely shot threes in his career. Why is his 3-point rating so high? A player like Diabo Savolosha had a 79.3 for the year that they went to the championship, and that is and his 3-pointer is as good as players like Kevin Durant and James Harden on that team. I understand that he had a good year, but the stats show that because he shot over 43% from the year that year, it warranted him to have a 89 3-pointer, even though we know that Diabo Savolosha is not known as a sharpshooter, but because he had that amazing year, 2K granted him that 79 rating. But I don't even want to talk too much about the historic teams, because just in general, those ratings are atrocious in my opinion, and and a lot of those ratings are the way they are because it balances out all the other players on the team, the John Browns, the Jason Williams, those fake players on the team. So they have to overrate and fluctuate a lot of those players to play better than what they really are, to compensate for them not being able to get all the players in the game that were actually on that team. So ratings, but I'm not saying 2K is right or wrong for the way that they rate their players. That's just the way that they rate their players. And that's up for you guys to decide whether you like the ratings that way or not. Another thing that I noted with the current roster as well is anytime you talk about a current roster, it is going to be an anomaly roster. What I mean by that is certain players and builds will not be on or in the draft classes. Players like LeBron James, we're going to continue to talk about the top of the league. Steph Curry, Kawhi Leonard, Antetokounmpo, Durant, Jokic, Harden. You won't see these type of players in the draft classes. You might see their builds, but in terms of the abilities of that player, you won't see them in the draft classes. When I went through the seasons there were no players who had badges over 35, 36 max. I feel like that's around the number that the 2K computer believes that the top player should be at. And seeing LeBron James with 60, Curry with 45, Kawhi in the 40s, Giannis with 50, Harden, Jokic, KD all with 40. I feel that some of these players, their badges can be toned down, seeing that 35, 36 is the limit. This goes back to what I was saying about the perception of the players. LeBron James is known as someone who can pass the ball well, so we have to give him passing badges. But we also have to make sure that he has a higher rating than Antetokounmpo, so we might have to, boost this and boost that. But 35, 36 was the max badges that I seen with the future. With the future roster, and I feel like that's where 2K wants a lot of their players to be around. And the reason I say that is because even with these top players, as you progress throughout your MyLeague, these badges will dwindle down, and they'll go toward that 35, 36 before the end of, or by the end of these players' careers. So that's why, in my opinion, I feel like that's where 2K wants a lot of their players' badges to be. But as you see, the way that the people who rated these players rated them, that's why they're higher than what the 2K computer and the 2K system wants them to be. If they were on the same system, who knows what badges players would have, or how the system generates what badges get what tier. Because the way that the 2K future players are rated and these players are rated are a lot different. The 2K computer and the 2K system factors in the ratings of the players. It's not just based on the perception of the player. It's not based on perception, because none of the players are real. So the future in of the MyLeague is purely based on what that player's ratings are, versus it being based on something different when we're talking about the current roster. And the last thing with the current roster that I noticed is the outliers. There's a lot of outlier players, which is obvious when we're talking about the current roster. There's not many outlier players when, if any at all, when we're talking about the future roster. In terms of the outlier players, with the current roster, your players like Ben Simmons, who's a 6'11" point guard. Players like Kevin Durant, who's extremely tall but can play multiple positions, your guard positions, your forward positions, and your players like that. You don't see that many players when we're talking about the future roster. It's more your point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward. You don't see those small forward point guard builds, or those point guard small forward builds. It's purely very cookie cutter and structured, which obviously makes sense because the 2K computer isn't going to be able to see if Ben Simmons comes out as a small forward, power forward, that he can also play the point guard. He's going to just stay at that one position. The computer and the system isn't advanced enough to understand that okay, this player also has point guard ability, so we're going to move them there based on the structure of the roster. Maybe at one point they'll get there, but you also always have the ability to change those things as well. Another thing that I noticed with outlier players is there aren't that many super small guards like an Isaiah Thomas who can who can achieve an elite level status, as well as your Taco Falls, your Bobans, players like that. You won't see too many of those players as well. So that's all the findings that I had, or a few of the findings that I had, mostly all of them, for your current NBA 2K21 roster. I will make sure that I put out another video talking about the auto-generated players and the auto-generated draft classes, and why I feel for example, these outliers aren't in those auto-generated draft classes, because I do feel like they were intentionally left out, and I want to give you guys my thoughts on that. But that's all I have for this video. Definitely leave your comments in the comment section below. Share the video if you want to share the video, and make sure to leave a like. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your time. KC Classic 7 signing out.